It's Bourbon Night. Hello, I'm Chad.
I'm Sarah.
And we just finished filming the episode that will be coming out on New Year's. It's our top 10 bourbons of the year.
A hotly contested episode. You know.
We shall see.
We put it together every year. I'm not gonna stop now.
Yeah. So a little preview. We say it in the episode, but we're also going to put out a alternative top 10 list of figuring in availability and price,
value, secondary.
People asked for it last year. We're delivering on that this year. But the first episode to come out, as we said, will be on New Year's. And it'll be just definitive, de facto, the list.
The best things that I tasted and he tasted.
Yeah. But
this year.
Then there'll be that other one. Also be the top rise. So you
plenty more best of content.
Yeah. But when we were sort of finishing the things up for this episode before we filmed it today, we got to talking about how there's not really, in our eyes,
a perfect
way
to
do a ranking. Now, one of those things that we think is needed is the blind element.
Oh, for sure.
And you can't convince us otherwise.
I love that we do the blind scoring because we get our notes, we get our first impression notes, we get our scores, and that kind of helps us see what rises to the top and what falls to the bottom. And then from there, it just gives us good things to group together to taste in smaller, because we can't taste 40 things blind all at once and everything get a fair shake. So kind of guides us to those smaller groups in which we do see, that's our double check, you know?
Right, and we're not saying that other people can't do large tastings and get, we're talking about
our capabilities
and how we do things. But what we noticed, and we've noticed this before, but I think it really clicked this year, is, you know, you can score things. You're looking at a whiskey in 4 categories, like we do: palate, mouthfeel,
nose,
finish. Totally not in that order.
Nose,
palate, mouthfeel, finish. 25 points possible in each for a combined score of 100. And that's great because it's blind and you're trying to be on the same level. But, you know, we do this over the month of December and things can change. Physiologically, that you can change in here, let alone it's just day to day or what you had for lunch that day or all that type of stuff.
Whatever.
So that's why when we get like our top 10, top 12, we'll pour those blind again and have them out here and take 5
little
and
small groups.
Start sipping them and pushing, well, no one has beat this one and this or this, you know, this side one, which is better?
Right.
A
or B?
Or B. This one. And then we get that list and then we reveal what they are. And things change. Some things stay the same.
Some things stay the same, but ultimately, it's just like the flight fight effect. You know, when you try something by itself, you feel a way about it, but then you try it against something else, and it kind of highlights either the great things about it or maybe some of its flaws, and that changes our opinion. But we did talk about it too. It's almost like, you know, like you can go to a really nice restaurant and you could sit down and have a amazing steak with like fancy mac and cheese and all this, like everything, all the fixins, whatever, and you have this incredible meal and that is amazing. And then you can just like go down the street to your favorite spot and get an excellent burger. And who's to say which of those meals is necessarily better? Like it depends on what you're craving.
Yeah.
It depends on your mood, whatever. Those meals can be equally as good in your mind, even though one was obviously way more expensive and way more fancy.
Yeah.
They can be equally as good in your head. One could be even your favorite over the other.
Well, and that's the other thing that we brought up in that conversation is there is a 5th category that is unrankable.
The 5th element.
And that is who you're drinking with.
True.
What your surroundings are, what type of mood you're in. I mean, it's a multi-layered category, but it's a category because if you are drinking something that you would never normally see in a store, maybe is the last one on the shelf, or maybe they just put it out and you scored it. It's sort of like an allocated thing, or something that you and your buddies have been wanting to try. Whatever that bourbon or whiskey is in your head, plug that in, Bourbon X, and you bring it over to your friend's house, and you're like, look what I lucked into. And they're all like, oh, are we gonna crack it open? Absolutely. Pop the cork, pour, drink.
The best thing I ever had.
This is my bourbon of the year, everybody.
Right.
This is my bourbon of the year. I'm going on record right now. This is my bourbon of the year. And we're not here to say that person's wrong. We're actually here to say, how could you be wrong?
Right, like how could you
can't be wrong. But I would say, go ahead and add 20 points to that score because of the element and the buddies and the friends and the being able to find it and everything.
The situation.
Go ahead and add an extra 20 points to that over if you were sitting down analytically and being like, okay, nose, 22.5. Palate, it's going to be different.
I think it's like the real life experience category of how did you come across this in real life? Like, how did you meet? Almost the story of how you met.
Right, yeah.
And it's really hard to quantify that. So for some people, again, it may hold a special place in your heart or in your ranking because of the memory that you have associated with when you tried it. And that might be enough to outrank something else that is maybe on paper technically a better bourbon or whiskey. I don't have a problem with that. Like, these lists are subjective. These are our opinions, but we do them blind so that we can get to, the actual, like, what's in the glass instead of what's going on around it.
Yeah.
But, I won't argue with you.
It just reminds me and sort of reinforces that saying that the best whiskey is the one that's in your glass, Mm-hmm. We do the list because we have a curiosity. We want to know what was the best that came out that year, and
without any bias. I want to know.
Without any bias. And I think to some degree that number one spot might not change, 10 out of 10 times. It might. If there was like a really strong second place one,
sure,
they may flip-flop a lot. But sometimes if it's just hitting your particular profile, all the buttons,
checking all the boxes,
all the boxes being checked, then that might be 10 out of 10, your number one. But 2 through 10, I guarantee you, if you just kept doing it over and over, you're gonna switch. And the staples that we put in, those 5 sort of everyday shelf ones that we put in there, you could get poured one of those and be like, it's not as good as that one, but man, I'm so happy to be drinking it.
That's kind of what, when we were talking about, like, you can have that really nice fancy meal and then you can have that, diner burger, whatever, and
Greasy
it just hits the spot.
Yeah.
I think there's something like that to be said about those staples, and that when you score them individually, not following one of these fancier pours, it's almost like, because it's so comforting and familiar, it really scores high. Mm-hmm. We found that sometimes they'll score really high because it's so expected, it's so familiar. I'm like, oh, this tastes like something I know, that's something that comforts me. And then when you go back and do the double check and we're trying them against each other, it's like, oh, okay, now it's becoming more clear that
the flaws get pointed out.
I mean, I don't know what it is until the end, but it becomes more clear that whiskey has more flaws than initially scored. Like, man, this scored really high, but it seems to be falling. Like, why is that happening? I think that's why that happens.
Yeah.
And I would love to see everyday staples come in, break the top 10. It's happened before for us. I don't mind when it happens. It's good news, if anything.
Yeah, and this will be a little bit of a spoiler, but I think we're okay. If you made it this far in the video, then you are welcome to hear this. We had a staple, again, one of the 5 more everyday, not a 2023 release, just something that you can always go out and get. We had one of those, score-wise, be in our top 10.
Sure.
But then when we did the double check, where we pour them blind in glasses and we start drinking them, it exited the top 10.
Yeah.
Because we had those that are on the bubble. We need to bring these that are on the bubble into here and taste them.
Just to make sure we feel confident.
And then that staple started, and it was out of the top 10. Would have been fine if it had stayed in the top 10.
Totally.
That actually gives people, I think, a lot of hope and quells the FOMO a little bit when something like that happens. But we have to be honest to ourselves in our ranking and
our palate.
And it did leave that top 10, but
still ranked highly, which is, again, I think, very good news.
Which means when you're drinking out on its own, you're gonna be very happy.
I hope so.
But
a lot more to get into in the episode, right? Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. It was just something we sort of wanted to put out because we thought it was a good conversation and we wanted to share it with you guys. So we'll see you guys on Sunday for our last episode of 2023. It's the top 10 best bourbons and finished bourbons of the year. So if you haven't subscribed already, come on to it. You can do so clicking right up here. The suggestions of other videos down here. Hope to see you over there in one of those. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Chad.
All right. See you then. Till then, drink more bourbon.